Bone and Cane crime novel, What You Don't Know. This novel sees the return of the brilliantly unconventional crime partnership, Sarah Bone and Nick Kane. Sarah Bone is a Labour MP who, in the first book, won an unwinnable safe Tory seat in Nottingham in 1997, fulfilling her political ambitions, but scuppering her reunion with her old flame, Nick Kane. Nick Kane has just been released from prison for dealing wholesale amounts of cannabis, which he grew in the cave beneath his flat. Finding a trapdoor in your flat that leads to a secret cave seems remarkable to us Tindal+Street+Press employees in Birmingham, but David informed me that these things happen. You know what I mean? I'm sure you're all growing all sorts of produce in your Australian extension. Anyway, this novel, what You Don't Know, is the second novel in the series, and it finds Nick Kane struggling to find his place in society. He's no longer able to work in schools with his criminal record. He tutors privately, teaching one very promising pupil, more of later, and works in drug rehab projects. What I think is particularly brilliant about the partnership, Sarah Bone, the MP, and Nick Kane, the ex-con, such different individuals, similar individuals who took separate paths. What I think is so great about this is the way it allows David to look at crime and corruption in politics and society from the policymakers in Westminster, and to see the effects of the decisions on the addicts and potential addicts on the streets in this book. What You Don't Know cleverly tells a story about the war on drugs from a number of angles, and introduces a new point of view character who readers of the first book haven't met yet. Jerry is the you of the title. She's a schoolgirl about to take GCSEs, living in a care home, but using the money she takes from her sugar daddy to buy extra lessons in Shakespeare, private tuition from Nick Kane. She sees the inevitability of what's happening to the other girls in care, and she's determined to avoid their fates. She's a brilliant original character for crime fiction. I hope you'll enjoy her sections in the novel. Just remains for me to say how pleased we are to be publishing this series. I'm pleased we are to be back in Nottingham for another hometown launch with David+Belbin. Bone and Cane was a really successful book for us last year. It was a #1 in the Kindle charts for a few weeks. It was the first time I've ever got to yelp, "We're #1," and then run to the fridge to find a bottle of champagne, and fail to find a bottle of champagne, and open a bottle of Beck's. So I was delighted. So thank you, David, for our #1 last year. I know David's busy writing the third, and I'm looking forward to reading it already. I'll hand over to David now, who's going to do a short reading and introduce the book to you himself, better than I can, I'm sure. And then we'll have a quick Q&A, you'll have a chance to ask questions, and David will read briefly again before you all start, get your books signed and drink a glass of wine. So thank you. Thank you, David.
Thanks, and really thank you so much for coming and reading this. And it's great to be here in Nottingham, in a room named after Alan Sillitoe, who I'm privileged to be a friend of, in Waterstones. I'd like to thank Shane for tonight, and I'd really like to thank everybody at Tindal+Street+Press. I don't want to be boring and ask a speech about it, but I really am proud to be with Tindal+Street, and they've done a fantastic job with this book, just as they did first Bone and Cane novel, and I hope to write them for a long time. I'm going to read, I don't need to tell you anything else. Half of you have read the first book, more than half of you I think, so I don't really need to tell you a great deal about Bone and Cane, and Luke's already very, very more than adequately introduced the new novel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the opening section. The opening section actually appears twice in the novel. Because it's a prologue which is also, if you like, a flash forward. But when it reappears, you also get rather more point of view and extra information. But it's a tease, it's not a spoiler, that's why I guess I'm saying anything. But it throws you straight into the action and tells you where the story's going. So I've read it at the start for a reason, and that's the reason that I'm reading it to you now. I nearly read the wrong bit, because I don't think it's the first. Sarah, can I have a word? The Home Secretary asked. Of course. Sarah followed the boss out of the debating chamber, expecting him to congratulate her on the speech she just made. The riot at Wormwood Scrubs had ruined her weekend. It was over, and as prisons minister, she'd come out of the situation with a reputation enhanced. Somebody who needs to speak to you urgently, he said when they were alone. Could you go with Sir Robin? The senior civil servant was standing discreetly by a large bookcase filled with the biographies of Sarah's fellow MPs. He led her into the depths of the Commons estate. Can you tell me what this is about? Sarah asked. I'm afraid not. It's an informal interview, but I'd advise you to be very careful about what you say. Sarah was worried now. An informal interview with whom? The question was ignored. Sir Robin knocked on an unlabelled door. He ushered her inside but didn't join her, which was probably for the best, as this office had barely enough room for the two people already there. Sarah suspected that the space was normally used for storage. The desk that the suited men sat behind was shabby, utilitarian. There were no windows or pictures on the walls. The men introduced themselves as police officers. Sarah was too flustered to take in names, but she got their ranks. A detective, a chief inspector, and a detective superintendent. As a former police officer herself, she knew immediately how serious this was. The DCI asked the questions. We need some sensitive information, Minister. About what? Your relationship with Paul Morris. I see. How do you describe your relationship with Mr. Morris? A professional one. We serve on the same committees, some of them. Perhaps, to save time, I could show you an item we found in Mr. Morris's flat. Can you confirm that these are yours? He held up an evidence bag containing a pair of pale blue knickers with a small navy ribbon bow. Sarah tried to keep her voice neutral. Possibly. I do own some underwear like that. And can you confirm that you left Mr. Morris's King's Cross apartment at 25 to 8 last Friday morning? They must have a witness. It was stupid to lie. Yes, I did. I take it you weren't there for a business meeting? No, I wasn't. Can you tell me what state Mr. Morris was in when you left that morning? Angry. I'd just dumped him. So, from then on, our relationship became purely professional, which is why I characterised it in that manner just now. Should she have explained her earlier obfuscation? Too late, she blurted it out. You're sure that he was the angry one, not you? I never get angry, Inspector, except for effect. Maybe angry is not the best word for the state that Paul was in. He was miffed, insulted, eager to change my mind. Change your mind about what? About my not seeing him again. The men exchanged glances. The superintendent spoke. You won't be seeing him again, will you? Not outside our professional relationship. No, but I don't understand what you're getting at. What has Paul done? Just to reiterate, he was in good health when you left him? He was very good. Sarah stopped herself. Wait, are you telling me that... The superintendent took over. Paul Morris was murdered, Minister, sometime on Friday morning, according to the pathologist. You were seen hurrying down Pentonville Road with what passers-by described as a distracted air. It's around 20 to 8 the same morning. Is that accurate? The first time, Sarah hesitated. Before we go any further, I think I better consult my solicitor.
Okay, so we're going to stand here slightly awkwardly and answer the questions. Not awkwardly, it's all professional. I just wanted to ask you, David, how aware were you of the kind of conventions of crime fiction when you were writing this book? How do you feel this book satisfies them, and how does it resist them?
We're marketing it as a crime novel, but I don't think about it too much as a crime novel while I'm writing it. I wrote a load of crime novels in the 90s. I wrote 20 crime novels for teenagers. So I've written every kind of crime novel, mystery, psychological thriller, a dozen police procedurals. I really didn't want to write from the police point of view again, and obviously you've got to have police characters. At the same time, I do think, you know, the crime novel makes for one of the most satisfying reads. So I wanted to use some of the conventions of the crime novel, and one of the conventions of the crime novel is that you have a body in the first chapter. And that's why you get the prologue that's actually something that happens towards the end, because the reader knows there's going to be a murder and it gets them involved in the story, which is primarily about drugs and how people make the living from drugs and what the effect